How you doing? It's Sandesh here. I'm going to be reading from an article on Infowars, and it's about the head of Church of England who crowned King Charles and married Harry and Meghan steps down for covering up serial child abuse. Okay, here we go. The head of the Church of England, known as the Archbishop of Canterbury, resigned on Tuesday after it was revealed he helped cover up a massive paedophile scandal among the um, Anglican Church. The church leader, Justin Welby, presided over the coronation of King Charles III, the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II, and the marriage of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. British news broadcaster Piers Morgan called the news huge. Um, I'll just read out his tweet. Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, who crowned King Charles, has resigned over allegations of covering up an infamous historic abuse scandal. Huge. According to a recent report, Welby intentionally hid church camp operator John Smith's heinous abuse of at least 130 boys and young men in Britain and South Africa. Welby issued a statement announcing his resignation on Tuesday, writing, "I must take personal and institutional responsibility for the long and re traumatizing period between 2013 and 2024. Um, yeah, I first heard about this today. It was on my Facebook feed, and Farage was talking about this, and he said, "Well, be has to go." I didn't know. I got. I'll be fair. I didn't know who he was talking about, but obviously, it's clearly about this guy here. So yeah, um, and the fact that he married Harry and Meghan Markle is not really a good judge of character either, and covering up a serial child abuse scandal is like, is the church ever going to learn? And unfortunately, no, they're not going to, because of the powerful people that obviously run it behind the scenes. So yeah, it's sickening, but at least he resigns. But it says Piers Morgan says alleged allegations, but the thing is, there's I doubted that the allegations. I think it's just like with the old saying, where there's smoke, there's fire. So there's no doubt this has to be true. There's obviously this has to be true. You doing Sandesh post production update edit, I guess you can say, for the about my about the Archbishop of Canterbury video. I wanted to dig into the history about it because I didn't know anything about it. So I found this on the Guardian, and it goes into it. It's a bit of a read, but I'll get into it now. Alright, it's called Justin Welby's personal link to child abuser adds fuel to resignation calls. Alright. Calls for the Archbishop of Canterbury to resign over failures and omissions regarding the sadistic abuser John Smith have not come out of the blue. Welby was notified of allegations of Smith's abuse 11 years ago. Channel 4 News brought them to public attention 7 years ago, and last week's independent review of the way the church handled their allegations has been more than 5 years in the making. Smith groomed public school boys who attended evangelic Christian summer camps in the late 1970s and early 80s. He took them to a garden shed at his home near Winchester and viciously beat them. This obviously isn't the first time this has happened in the Catholic Church. Obviously, the review led by Keith Mackin said Smith, who died in 2018, had subjected his victims to traumatic physical, sexual, and psychological and spiritual attacks. The impact of that abuse is impossible to overstate, and has permanently marked the lives of his victims. Some have tried to kill themselves. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised how often they try to kill themselves, especially if no one's going to believe them, and also with the fact that if it's just going to get buried. A 1982 investigation secretly carried out by the Wing Trust, I think that's how it's said, sorry about that, which funded holiday camps, holiday camps, was covered up. Winchester College, the public school attended by many other victims, banned Smith from its premises but did not report his crimes to the police. That's just as bad, just because you banned him, but just because you banned him, I mean, that doesn't mean anything. I mean, go the next step, report it. Smith moved to Zimbabwe, where he continued to abuse boys and faced charges of killing a 16-year-old boy at a holiday camp in 1992. The case was dismissed. I'm not surprised the case was dismissed now, thinking right back in 1992, and it's in Zimbabwe, in a third world country. What a shock. Um, Smith relocated to South Africa, where in 2017 he was removed as a leader of his local church in Cape Town after claims of inappropriate behaviour. Welby had come across Smith where when he volunteered at the Wing Trust holiday camps in Dorset. He said in 2017, "As I recall him, he was a charming, delightful, very clever and brilliant speaker. Always the traits of a narcissistic psychopath. I wasn't a close friend of his. I wasn't in his inner circle or in the inner circle of the leadership of the camp. Far from it. He has said he had no inkling of the abuse or of concerns about Smith at the time. He must have heard about it. This just sounds like nonsense. Last week's report said that this was unlikely. Welby may not have known of the extreme seriousness of the abuse, but it is more probable that he would have had at least a level of knowledge that John Smith was of some concern. In 2013, a few months after Welby took up his role as Archbishop, he and other senior figures were notified of the allegations. Last week, he acknowledged that he did not ensure that this was pursued as energetically as remorselessly as it should have been, as it was, he said, a really shaming failure. By 2013, there was no excuse for not acting. 30 years earlier, when initial evidence about Smith's abuse was uncovered, it could be argued that there was a culture that failed to recognise the damage caused by abuse, and that allowed institutions to prioritise reputation over justice. Yeah, I'm sure. Um, yeah, um, back in the early 90s and obviously the 80s and 70s, then there pretty much would have been that culture of thinking as far as when it comes to religion, but you got to separate the religion from the person. And as far as this person goes, John Smith, he was just a narcissistic psychopath. That's what he was. But the magnitude and repercussions of abuse in the Catholic Church had created shockwaves around the world by 2013, and the COE's own history, abuse, and its covering up was becoming known. Welby's instinct on Smith, as with other cases, appears to have been to hope the issues would go away and survivors would give up their fight for the truth. Many survivors say the trauma of abuse has been compounded by the way they have been treated by the church. It is like being abused all over again, some say. Yeah? I mean, it's psychological abuse on the way they will get treated in public, whenever it's a news or not. Since Welby became Archbishop, the COV has published a string of reports on its handling of abuse cases. Nearly all have found evidence of concealment, cover-up, and efforts to contain reputational damage. The COV has poured money and resources into its efforts to improve safeguarding and correct the mistakes of the past. There have been some improvement, but most survivors say that overall, the Church's response has been inconsistent, often damaging under Welby's watch. What marks up this case is that Welby is personally embroiled in it. He was at the holiday camps when Smith, a man he greatly admired, was grooming boys for sadistic gratification. He was in a position of power when survivors came forward and he failed to act. The CRV has dragged its feet over the review it commissioned into Smith's crimes. No wonder the calls for Welby's resignation are growing. Some of those with the loudest voices have others dispute Welby. Traditionalists resent his managerialism. Sorry about that. And what they see as his failure to cherish small parish churches that have been the CLV's backbone for centuries. They also say he has gone too far in embracing same-sex couples. Others with a more progressive outlook say that he has not gone far enough and that the CLV is out of touch with societal change. And this is what I don't understand. Why, why did he embrace same-sex couples in 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 I guess you could say Catholicism. I suppose you can say I'm wrong, but the thing is, I mean, I suppose you could say that that the woke culture is in a religion in itself, and they can easily have their own church, just like Scientology does. So anyway, now the two sides appear to be finding a common ground. For now, Welby appears to be set on adding to the pile of previous apologies and admissions of shame regarding clerical abuse in the hope of riding out the storm. Plans are already in place for him to announce his retirement in the next couple of months to take effect when he turns 70 in January 2026. And while he will be desperate not to be forced to quit ahead of schedule, he may be keenly looking forward to quieter times ahead. So yeah, before when I first heard about it on Infowars, mistakenly thought Justin Welby was the one doing the abuse. Now that I got the context, now that I know about it, I'm glad that I read this. Just because he personally didn't do it, he was still pretty much involved by covering up and not doing anything about it. A long time ago, when really he could have, and he was right there, and people were bringing it up to him like, dude, and the victims were bringing up to him to like do something about it. So yeah, I just wanted to add this in post. Um, but anyway, there you go. Thanks a lot. So let me know what you think, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.